Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and it's your host, Abacus The Great here. Excuse me. And, this is the introduction and draft, analysis for GPL Season 3. Take a sip of water there. And, going over my team quickly, it's a league that I'm in. I want to try to get back into recording for, Pokemon Draft Leagues. And this is a league I'm in with a lot of my friends, and I think some of them will also be uploading. So, I'm just going to quickly go over my team so I can start recording the team builders. We haven't actually started, though, but just want to quickly go over this. So, starting off with my first round pick, this is a tiered draft, with a couple of differences from the standard tiered draft. For example, we allowed Mega Mawile, which was picked first overall. I had the 8th overall picked, and we're doing 3 Z captains instead of 1. So those are a couple of changes. Also, we're allowing unreleased Megas. So we're going through. What I wanted to grab was Magearna in case it dropped me. I did not expect it to drop to me, but it almost did. It was just a couple of picks before me that it got picked, unfortunately. But I'm looking at what's there. Sorry about that. I'm looking at what is still on the board, and even though Z-Weather's banned, Manaphy's still there. Manaphy is still on the board somehow, and I'm not sure how it dropped to the 8th pick. This is out of 10 people, by the way. I'll go over how that works, how the battling works after the draft analysis. Basically, well, no, I'll just go over it now. Basically, you have 2 pools of 5 each, and we'll have 2 interconference matches that are sort of just play-in matches. And then the top 3 people who get out of the 2 pools, you play each person in your pool once, 4 matches. Your 3 best records out of those 5 people move on to the playoffs. 3s versus 2s, 1 of those matches versus the 1s, 1 of those matches play each other. So, I grabbed Manaphy here. Manaphy, anybody who's played Draft League format knows how good of a Pokemon Manaphy is. It, of course, gets one of the most busted moves in the game in Tail Glow. And I mean, it's great. It's a good bulky water. Obviously, it doesn't want to be used as a bulky water, but I guess it's one of the best setup moves in the game. It gets hydration, so you can Rain Dance and rest up, things like that. It gets really good coverage. It gets Ice Beam, Dazzling Gleam, Energy Ball. It gets Knockoff, it gets Psychic, U-Turn, realize it got U-Turn. You get some cool coverage or tech you can use on it. It's just a great mon to build around. And of course, with me being the 8th pick, there's only 2 people that get 2 picks before my next pick around. And if you thought Manaphy dropping to the 8th pick is insane, I want to talk about something that's a little bit even more insane. This one dropped to the 12th pick in the draft. Kyurem-black. Kyurem-black dropped to the 12th pick in this draft. Now, yes, it's a tiered draft, but still, it's Kyurem-black. It's a legendary Pokemon. It's an uber legendary, it's a box legendary. It has base 170 attack, enough coverage to get by, and with the addition of Z moves, it's amazing. Especially with Manaphy, they're both big wall breakers. They can wall break for each other. Its coverage is amazing. It gets, of course, Dragon, Ice. It does not get good physical Ice coverage, which is what's holding it back, really. But also gets Rock Slide, Stone Edge, Fusion Bolt's a big one, Earth Power, Iron Head, Psychic even. Does it get both the screens? It does get both the screens. That's interesting. But Kyurem-black is just a great mon. And then one of my favorite things about it personally is its bulk. It has the offenses of an insane truck, and then it's not going to drop to whatever random super effective attack you have for it. Its weaknesses are only Dragon, Fairy. Oh, okay, it has 6 weaknesses: Dragon, Fairy, Steel, Fighting, Rock, not Fire, not Ice. Yeah, that's right. But its resistances are pretty solid. It resists Grass, Electric, and, of course, both things that Manaphy wants. So as an offensive core, Kyurem-black and Manaphy cover each other really well. Of course, the Z move is very useful on kyurem-black, as well as it is on Manaphy, and its coverage is great. So, when you're looking at these two mons, especially without Z-Rain or Z-Hail, because only Z attacks are allowed, I'm kind of, you know, they're slow. They're sort of slow for offensive Pokemon, so I wanted Scolipede. Unfortunately, about 5 picks before mine, a guy named Professor Chipboard, I think he also is recording his videos, he picked up Scolipede in the 3rd round. I actually have to play him week 1, but he picked up Scolipede in the 3rd round, so I was not really happy. I wanted Scolipede, of course, and I was searching for what I wanted to get at this point. So I'm looking at it, and I'm really not sure how I want my draft to go at this point. I knew one thing I at the very least needed or wanted was spin support and hazards. And there's a really, really solid tier 3 Pokemon on the board still. And believe me, there are some meh tier 2s and some tier 3s that were going off the board in rounds 2 and 3. Like Arcanine, like Florges, I think Lucario maybe. But there were some average Pokemon going this early. So picking this at this point, I didn't feel as bad about it. I went ahead and actually, if I can say words, picked up Donphan. Donphan is a Pokemon I've used a little bit in a couple of draft tournaments. And it is surprisingly good if you have the right things around it. And Donphan works really, really well with this team. Of course, it's a great Stealth Rock setter. Its coverage is a lot better than a lot of people think it is. It gets Play Rough, it gets Heavy Slam, Head Smash, of course Edge Quake, Fire Fang. Does it get all 3 of the Fangs? It does not get Thunder Fang, but it gets Ice Shard and Fire Fang. It gets Poison Jab, Seed Bomb, Super Power. And of course, the 2 big ones are Stealth Rock and Rapid Spin. And its stats are not great, but it's bulky enough on the physical side to be a very good physical wall. And it's also a good, you know, bulky attacker. It can be an Assault Vest user. It does a lot of things. It can function well in Trick Room as well, which is good. I like Donphan with this team, especially with what I end up drafting around it. So 4 picks later, and I go ahead and pick up Mandibuzz. Mandibuzz is, especially with Donphan, as they're my 2 good hazard removers. I get another hazard remover later, but it's not really a hazard remover. I'll talk about that later. But Mandibuzz and Donphan, they function really well together. Of course, the shared ice weakness, that's going to get covered later in my defensive core. Something I wanted to point out, I wanted to build a defensive core around these 2 ones. And Mandibuzz gets decently slow U-turns off into kyurem-black and Manaphy, so kyurem-black and Manaphy can start claiming lives. And Mandibuzz, its defenses are great. It is a great all-around just sort of catch-all wall. Overcoat's a good ability. It gets Defog, it gets Roost for recovery, it gets Knockoff, Foul Play, U-turn, Taunt. It's a decently fast taunter. It's not that fast, but it does get Taunt. Whirlwind, of course. It stops a lot of setup, which is something I really like out of a Pokemon, especially out of a wall. So I do that. We get, I think, 14 picks before my next pick coming around. And I'm looking at everything I want, everything on my draft board. And not that many things that I specifically want are really going to go. So, of them, the one that's most likely to go at this point is Cobalion. Cobalion, it gives me another Stealth Rocker. It gives me a really strong physical attacker that's faster than base 100 speed, which I liked at this point. It's not that strong, but you'd be surprised. I mean, with base 120 power, it's very powerful with base 108 speed, and it's really had to fit the stat. It's another great Stealth Rocker with Volt Switch for more initiative to get into my big wall breakers. It was basically what this team was built around. Ways to get into the wall breakers as much as possible, and give them the best chance to win me the game. And Cobalion, it just has a lot of good utility. It's actually a faster taunter than Mandibuzz. And of course, gets dual dance with Sword Dance and Rock Polish. And it can be special with Focus Plus, although of course physical is preferred. And Kaboyan is just a great utility mon. With taunt, with things like taunt, it also gets T-Wave. Kaboyan is just, it's a good utility mon. It's a good defensive wall when I need it to be. It can function in a lot of different situations. I feel like it fits well in this team. Coming back around, I get the thing that sort of gels together my defensive core. And that Pokemon is Jellicent. Jellicent is a great tier 4 mon. This is, of course, a GBA tiered draft. And Jellicent is a monster in tier 4. I really like it with this team because it gives me a couple of things I didn't have before. It gives me a spin blocker. It gives me a bulky water type, so Manaphy doesn't feel like it's ever going to have to really be in that role at any point. It gives me a lot. It checks so many different things. Especially defense is amazing. Base 105 with base 100 HP. It's enough to wall a lot of things. It gets Will-O-Wisp. It's a water immunity, which is very useful. It has 3 immunities, I think. Water, normal fighting, of course. And its coverage is surprisingly good with, of course, its dual stabs plus Fairy and Dark. And Ice Beam, of course. So its coverage is good enough, but the big thing that Jellicent gives is it gives me Trick Room, which is pretty cool. With Donphan, with it gives me that Trick Room setter, which can be useful at other points. Moving on to the rest of my team. Thing comes around, and at this point, I don't have that many Pokemon that are going to be picked, really. They're very under-the-radar Pokemon. I already know that my Mega at this point is completely safe, and I feel good just starting to get a lot more of those lower-tier mons. So I go ahead and pick up a Pokemon that I've started to really like in the format. It just checks so many different really good coverage options. Rotom-frost. Rotom-frost, yes. First of all, Stab Bolt Beam is amazing. Of course, it's a Blizzard, not Ice Beam, but 70% of the time, it's better. So, I can also run Hail with this team, and I'll talk about why in a little bit later. Stab Bolt Beam is great, and it resists 2 of the best dual coverage options in the game, in Bolt Beam and Ice Ground. And I think it's the only Pokemon to resist both. There are very few Pokemon that resist one, and very few Pokemon that resist the other, but this is one of the few that resists both. And it's just great for those couple of reasons. And Rotom's always, you know, Rotom Wash is like tier 2. Rotom Heat's tier 3, and this thing, it's just a little bit worse than them. But, and of course as a defensive typing, Ice isn't very good. But when, you know, working for those specific mons, Rotom-Frost can be very useful. And its defense stats are the same as, well, Rotom. And its speed stat, it's the same stats as Rotom Wash. It's just, you know, in tier 5. You know, Rotom-Frost can run a lot of different sets. It could be Scarf, it could be Specs, it could be Assault Vest, it could be Especially Defensive, Physically Defensive, Will-O-Wisp, probably, you know, Volt Switch, more Volt Turn. Now getting into some more of my lower tier Pokemon. The next low tier Pokemon I end up picking up is Sneasel. I draft 3 Ice types. Actually, I don't think I pick up Sneasel at this point. I have my list on tiers, not on... Yeah, Sneasel's definitely not the Pokemon that I pick up here, but... Whatever, let's just go over Sneasel now for a reveal that. Sneasel... And even in tier 4, where it is in this league, it's surprisingly good. And of course, it is my 3rd Ice type. But Ice Man, when all 3 can function as offensive Pokemon, is pretty solid. It of course gets Icicle Crash, Ice Punch, Ice Shard, Knockoff, Low Kick. You already know its coverage, it's a worse Weavile. It's a good Pursuit Trapper. It gives me a speed tier that I do not have at this point. It is my fastest Pokemon at this point. It's not going to end up being with what my last few round picks end up being. My last 3 picks are all faster. You'll know. 2 of my last 3 picks are faster than this. But base 115 is a great speed tier. Gets the coverage it needs, and it can run so many different things. It can run Choice Banded, run Life Orb, Choice Banded, Life Orb, Focus Sash. It can even be Eviolite to mess with somebody. Take a random priority move that it needs to take, whatever. It can do a lot. Of course, get Swords Dance, it can set up. But Sneasel, it's a surprisingly good Pokemon, even in Tier 4. It's very good. Now moving on to my last 3 Pokemon. I'm looking at this, and what I can pick up at this point is a Tier 2, a Tier 5, and a Tier 1 Mega. So I'm going to go in that order with what I pick up. I think the thing that I messed up here was I pick up this Pokemon before I pick up Rotom-frost or Sneasel. But anyway, a Pokemon is still on the board, a Pokemon that I've never used before. Alakazam is still there, in Tier 2. It gives me a Psychic type. It gives me that Fighting Dark Psychic Core. Of course, Mana Buzz isn't... Well, Sneasel, Alakazam, and Cobalion. Great offensive core. You already know what Alakazam does. It's a Focus Sasher. It gets Life Orb. It now gets Counter. Its special attack stats really, really high. Psychic Root Force is a great typing for attacking. It's a good typing for attacking at the very least. And the utility that Alakazam gets is also surprising. It gets Disable, Encore, Knockoff, Foul Play, Screens, Counter, like I said earlier, Taunt, T-Wave. Alakazam can do a lot of different things other than just the Sasher Life Orb set, or at least have that, utility slot at the end for Alakazam sets. Alakazam, it's a surprisingly good Pokemon. It's not surprisingly good, but it's surprisingly versatile, is what I meant to say, of course. And so, with my last 2 picks, Alakazam, it fits both the team. It gives me a new higher speed tier, but that higher speed tier is not as necessary when you're looking at the next Pokemon. I pick up my Scolipede Substitute. It was something I planned to draft from round 3 when Scolipede got sniped. I still wanted Speed Pass with this team. Manaphy, kyurem-black, everything on my team, other than, say, I don't know. Honestly, everything on my team, maybe barring Jellicent, can take a Speed Pass really easily. And there's a Pokemon in Tier 5 that does that really well. And its name is Ninjask. I picked up Ninjask. I actually picked up Ninjask. It gets Speed Boost. It gets Baton Pass. It gets Sub, of course, but it's just a really, really solid Pokemon for what I needed. Of course, it gives me this huge jump in speed tier from 120 to 160. But Ninjask, it does what it does. It Baton Passes. There's not that much else to say. Then it Baton Passes a lot. Yeah, that's what Ninjask does. And then, finally, of course, I get a Tier 1 Mega, and there are a couple of things I'm missing here. I would like something that offensively meshes well with kyurem-black and Manaphy. Maybe a Fairy Dragon Steel Core would be nice. I want an offensive Fairy type. My original plan was to get Mega Gardevoir and something else as a Tier 2 Mon. But what I decided to do, considering that having an offensive Fairy type that has a new speed tier for me would be great. So I go ahead and pick up Mega Diancie. Diancie is a great Mega now with the whole speed boost effects at turn 1 instead of you having to wait a turn to get the speed boost. That's the big one. It gets Magic Bounce that allows me to keep rocks off the field a little bit longer for those 5 Stealth Rock weak mons I have on my team, being Mana Buzz, Ninjask, kyurem-black, Rotom-frost, and Sneasel. But Mega Diancie's coverage, you know what Mega Diancie's coverage is. It's Diamond Storm, it's Earth Power, it's Moonblast. And then, whatever Psychic coverage it gets Rock Polish, it gets Stealth Rock, of course, which is big because I only have 2 Stealth Rockers at this point. But that's what Mega Diancie does. Mega Diancie clicks those buttons with base 160 attacking stats, and it kills a lot of Pokemon with its moves. It was the offensive mega I wanted, and I think it functions with this team really well. So basically, this team is Manaphy, kyurem-black, Mega Diancie as my big offensive threats, as well as Alakazam, with the utility of Cobalion and the defensive wall core of Donphan, Manabuzz, and Jellicent, with rotom-frost, and like I said, Cobalion being able to function whenever needed as defensive Pokemon. Ninjask can Speed Pass, Sneasel and Alakazam also function really well as attacking Pokemon. And I like this team. They do really well together. Ice Spam is something I can do when people don't have many ice resists. I have the bulky water I wanted. I never got a grass or fire type, but that's because I never thought a grass or fire type was really needed. Not like in general, just with this team, I feel like I can do well without a grass or fire type. And I feel like everything on this team has its role, and everything on this team is going to get brought, I feel, multiple times, and they're going to be used multiple times. So, I like the team, and I'm going to be playing with it, of course. I'll be uploading, hopefully, all the matches, and I'm going to be trying to do live comps with it. So hopefully that will be great. And if I'll